Welcome in, everybody, to Betting Pros. It's me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to take a hard look at the NFL season, the awards, the futures, everything in between, with my good friend from SportsGrid, the one, the only host of Pro Football Today, Mike Blewitt. Mike, welcome to the show. It's great to have you back again, my friend.
Yeah, buddy. I'm excited to be here with you. It feels like just slipping right back into a nice, comfortable, cozy chair. You and I have done this many times together. I'm disappointed that we don't get to do it actually side by side, but such is life these days, and I'm excited to talk about some of the things that you have lined up for us.
I'm just happy to talk to adults most time. You know, I've been here with my kids for a year and a half in the house, basically, for the most part. They're going back to school. I know yours are back to school, but it's just nice to talk to an adult. And again, I use that term adult lightly when I refer to you and myself, clearly.
True.
But that's why we're friends, and that's why we're here. And we've got a great show for you today. We're going to be looking at some of the awards for NFL season, who we like, the long shots, the favorites. We're going to talk Super Bowl. We're going to talk a lot of other things here. But I just want to remind everybody, if you're not already, make sure you subscribe to the Betting Pros podcast. You can follow us on the Twitter machine as well at NFL Betting Pros. And also don't forget to look at bettingpros.com, where all the consensus odds live. Every single betting house in one spot. You can look at the odds, see the consensus, see the things you like, and then find the best odds. Click on it, and it takes you right there to make your wager. What's better than that? I don't know. I'm not even going to ask the question anymore. So, Mike Blewitt, let's start and have some fun with the quarterbacks, and let's start with most regular season passing yards. This year, Patrick Mahomes is at the top of that board, plus 300. Dak Prescott at plus 500, despite the injury, who is a player that I really think could hit that mark this year. Josh Allen at plus 850. Then you got some of the longer shots, Tom Brady at 950, Justin Herbert at plus 1200, and Matt Ryan at plus 13. Now, there's a certain amount of need, right, when you're looking at this in terms of the passing yards, because you need the defense to kind of be bad. Yep. You need to beat them in situations where they're still going to be aggressive late in games. And that's my concern with Mahomes at the top. I'm looking at this, Mike, and I look at Dak Prescott. I kind of look at Tom Brady, too, because, you know, Tom Brady's not happy unless he's breaking crazy records and doing things. So what does the board look like to you? Because Dak, to me, has that best shot to throw for 5,000 yards, but maybe we shouldn't discount Brady or maybe even a Josh Allen, too.
Yeah, I think those are all fair, and I think your concerns are rooted in real, actual experience having tracked this before, right? It's rare that we're going to see. Pat Mahomes is a unique quarterback. We all know that, and he could obviously put up crazy numbers, but we're also talking about a team that you and I probably both expect, and the betting market expects, are going to win a ton of games. So they're going to be winning most of their games. They don't have to be throwing in the fourth quarter at every moment. Now, granted, Andy Reid might let him still throw. He trusts him to throw for first downs to ice games. But is he really going to be pushing hard every single game? I'm not entirely sure. The fact that he's the betting favorite, some might see some value at 3-1. But I would suspect that at some point, Pat Mahomes could lose the lead on passing yards and get even better odds at some point down the road. I think you're right to look at Dak. I think Dan Quinn coming in as defensive coordinator is amongst the most, if not the most important coaching change, despite the fact that he's no longer a head coach in the entire league. Can he really get Dallas's defense to play to a better level than they were last year? Now, while we can't predict injuries, I do have trepidation about players that are actively injured, and Dak is right now. So I have some concerns about that. The team does line up for him to put up a lot of yards. I think the Bucs are going to absolutely smash their division and win a ton of games. So again, while Brady put up, I think, even better numbers than people remember last year, I don't know that I would have him in the lead for passing yards. You can put up big numbers, even win an MVP, but most passing yards, I don't like it. I got to be honest. I think you're the guy. You and I have talked about this offline. Josh Allen is your guy this year. He's the offense. It's really interesting. But I happened to talk about this just recently on SportsGrid. And I know I'm a homer, and people are going to say, well, you went to BC, and that's why you're talking about Matt Ryan, and there's this whole connection. And I get it. I'm a homer for Matt Ryan. But that defense is going to be terrible. And I think Arthur Smith is a really good offensive coordinator. Matt Ryan has led the league or been right near the top of the league in the past in passing yards. So at 13-1, I have to be honest, it's pretty compelling to me for Matt Ryan, considering how bad I expect their defense to be.
I think it's a great argument. I mean, that defense is perennially awful. They never tackle in the secondary, and they've got a fun new weapon there in Kyle Pitts, who is going to be a really matchup disaster for opposing defenses for sure. I think Ryan is actually a wonderful long shot one. I'm kind of with you about Mahomes. We all think they're going to win a lot of games, the Chiefs. It's just how competitive are those fourth quarters going to be, and I can't imagine I think it goes back to Dak. Tom Brady, once again, I kind of look around too, and I just wonder, can they force it that much? I know they've got all those great wide receivers. It's very tempting, but maybe you're onto something there with Matt Ryan. I think that's a fascinating later pick for that one. Let's go to regular season passing touchdowns. Different kind of award here. Patrick Mahomes leads this group here with plus 300. Then at 460, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson plus 700, Aaron Rodgers plus 850, and Josh Allen at 10-1 at plus 1,000. So Rodgers is the fascinating one in terms of return on investment there, plus 850. And obviously I think Brady is the other one that kind of comes to mind because Josh Allen, because he runs the ball so much, a lot of rushing touchdowns, I think you kind of knock him down. He's probably in the right spot there, but I don't know if there's anybody else to really challenge on the peripheral. So what do you think of these guys who are the favorites for this one?
So only 3 guys threw for 40 touchdowns last year. Aaron Rodgers led the way with 48. Brady and Russ Wilson's tied at 40. I don't think this is a deep market at all. You and I just talked about Matt Ryan at 13-1. You could also look at Joe Burrow at 16-1 for most passing yards. But realistically, on passing touchdowns, we're talking about efficient offenses, teams that are likely going to win a lot of games, just like those 3 teams I mentioned last year did in the Bucs, the Hawks, and the Packers. And I think it's a pretty thin market here. You got Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers, and Allen are really the guys that I'm going to look at. Could Dak get in there? Maybe, but they do have a workhorse back who'll get a lot of goal line looks. I think you could say the same for Russell Wilson. As good as their offense might be, there is a penchant for Pete Carroll to want to run the ball. And I just don't know that the Seahawks will be as efficient this year. I think you're looking at Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers, and Allen. Anybody outside of that, I'd be surprised. While I expect Matt Ryan to throw for a lot of yards, I don't think the offense will be that efficient. I just don't see him getting up into the 40 to 45 touchdown range. Is really where you need to be now. I'm not suggesting 10 guys get 40 touchdowns this year, but I find it to be a pretty thin market. These are winning teams that will score a lot, and I think it's Allen, Rodgers, Brady, and Mahomes. Take your pick. I think you could probably sprinkle a little bit on all of them. If you're more partial to the long shot, I think you go Rodgers to run it back and then Allen.
Makes sense to me. All right, let's look at some of the receivers right now. DeAndre Hopkins leads the board here with most regular season receiving yards, plus 750. Stephon Diggs right behind him at plus 800. To your point, discussing Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley at plus 1,000. Then you've got Tyreek Hill at plus 12, Travis Kelce plus 13. I'm just never betting for a tight end for that. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do it. And then DK Metcalf at plus 13. But to me, I keep coming back to Calvin Ridley because you have the vacated targets of Julio Jones. You have an offense they're going to have to, like you said, throw the football. So Calvin Ridley seems like a really good investment on this one.
Yeah, he was 5th last year, 1,374 yards. Only Jefferson, Hopkins, Kelce, and Diggs had beaten him. Your only concern for Ridley would be, well, can he perform in the same way that he has the last couple of years with no Julio there? I would really point to the fact that, yes, I do think he is an alpha wide receiver, a number 1 wide receiver on ability, and also the volume is going to be extreme. There are, like I said, this team is going to lose a lot of games. I expect them to be a last place team, Joe, in their division. I think the roster is headed in the wrong direction, and Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, the GM, are building really they both got 6-year contracts. They're both building towards a future that is without Matt Ryan. But for now, they'll still try to win games. I don't know that they're going to be bottom of the barrel of the NFL, but with the Saints still throwing punches with a good roster, the Bucs being the class of the division, and the Panthers improving, they've got a lot to go. I think Ridley is really interesting there. As far as other guys, I mean, the odds are pretty long in general, right? You don't have anybody that's a short favorite. I think you can take swings at Hopkins and Diggs to run it back. Diggs was the leader last year, but Devontae Adams, it's pretty interesting, right? But with Aaron Jones there and a really legitimate another really
And the
legitimate pass
efficiency
catcher.
was just off the chart last year for Rodgers. I think that's very difficult to repeat year after year.
Yeah.
And look, now Devontae Adams might be that guy because he is playing for a contract. Let's not forget, when the money's on the line, the big numbers tend to show up in the NFL. So they might push a little for that too. So
I'll give you one long shot here, and it would require somebody probably to go down, but that's why you're taking long shots. Would be CeeDee Lamb at 26-1. I think he's easily going to become the number one wide receiver on that team. It's still not talked about as directly as that.
I've got him as wide receiver 9 in my fantasy rankings. So
I'm with you, but you know what I'm saying? Like this fantasy offseason, people are bullish on Lamb, but I think we need to be more direct about it. He's better than Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup already. I think by a wide margin. So,
and he plays in the slot, which means he's going to get a lot more volume. So I think that's a very astute one. And you know what? It's just a matter of, because the other two guys are there, that's my only concern, is because they don't have to filter the ball. I think it's just like this weird hybrid, which is why you see Hopkins and Diggs at the top, right? Yeah. Because those are the two guys, but Ridley, you get the better odds, so maybe you kind of go with Ridley on this one. Let's go to the rushing real quick, Mike, and talk about regular season rushing yards. Derrick Henry, of course, coming off the 2,000-yard rushing season. Plus 400 is the favorite. Dalvin Cook plus 600. So I don't know, now that Irv Smith is out, maybe Dalvin Cook gets used even more. It is fascinating to see how that kind of affects things. Christian McCaffrey at plus 6. And then my dude, Nick Chubb, plus 850. Nick Chubb was so good the second part of last year when he came back from that injury. He still finished as running back number 9 on the year, and he only played 12 games. And I'm telling you right now, I'm looking at Nick Chubb. That's double the odds you're getting. If you want to put some money on Derrick Henry to do it again, great. I just think that offense is going to be a lot more balanced this season because of having Julio Jones in it. And Nick Chubb, everything that they do, Mike, in Cleveland is based off of Nick Chubb. That play action they run, it's Nick Chubb making sure that they establish him and establish that run early. He has been the key to that success and the evolution, if you will, of Baker Mayfield. And I'm looking at Nick Chubb at plus 850, and I just want all the shares.
Pretty interesting call. I like it. Keep in mind, his 1,067 yards last year only came on 190 carries. To put it in perspective, David Montgomery, 3 yards more total, and he had 247 carries. So to your point,
that's a pretty good perspective.
It was really, really efficient. I think the only one that was as efficient as him was Aaron Jones, and we know that the Packers offense was sort of off the charts in terms of efficiency. I think Chubb is a really interesting target there. It's always easy to look at the favorite and be like, well, of course, Derrick Henry is going to. I think you're right. It'll be more balanced. I don't know that Mike Vrabel, I don't know that he's going to be as balanced as you and I might want him to be. I think he's still going to put the ball in Derrick Henry's hands a lot.
Chubb 2 years ago was only a few yards behind Derrick Henry. Yeah. And I think people forget that. Yeah. And now we're looking at, like, if you're coming off a 2,000-yard season, I think they've got playoff aspirations. I think you want to monitor Henry a little bit. You don't want him going to 2,000. You might not even want him going up to 17. You might want to keep him in that 16 range. And if it stays in the 1,600 range in the 17-game season, Mike, I think that is a very distinct possibility for Nick Chubb to get really close to that number.
I think I like the call in general because the guys right around that range. Jonathan Taylor behind him. We're already dealing. The Colts are the cursed team this preseason. Tons of injuries at quarterback, at guard, at wide receiver. They're dealing with a lot. And everybody else, Cook, McCaffrey, Mixon, Antonio Gibson, Saquon Barkley, Aaron Jones, all the other guys at the top of the board. They're great and talented, but we all know that we'd be more likely to bet on them for a total scrimmage yards bet than we would for them to have just straight rushing yards. And we know Nick Chubb's role.
All right, this next one here, as we shift into awards and MVP, kind of ties into some of the quarterback stuff we were already talking about, right? So it's, of course, the usual suspects. It's typically a quarterback award. Very, very rarely do we get anybody else winning this kind of thing. Patrick Mahomes plus 500. Then you have Aaron Rodgers at plus 1,000. Tom Brady plus 1,200. At plus 13, Josh Allen plus 17. Dak Prescott and Lamar Jackson plus 17 as well. So this is all about the narrative you want to write, right, Mike? This is about what team you think is going to look really good heading in to the postseason. And certainly these are the quarterbacks that come to everybody's mind. So how do you see this board, and how do you want to, let's say if you had 100 chips, how would you kind of sprinkle them around here?
Yeah, so I think you're right. It's about the narrative. My first narrative that I jump on when I see this board is I really do think the Bucks are going to have a pretty fantastic regular season. I think it's akin to those 2003 Patriots who stubbed their toe earlier in the season and then ripped off a ton of wins that carried the momentum into the 2004 season, and they won nearly 20 games in a row, including the playoffs. I see this team a little bit like that, this Bucks team. I think they're going to capitalize on the 7-game win streak to end the season. I think they can carry a ton of wins through the regular season. I think the schedule lines up okay. And I think they're going to get in the range of 13, maybe even 14 wins. It's hard to predict that many because so many things can go wrong. But Brady at the helm, potentially having another really efficient season and winning a division and maybe getting the 1 seed in the NFC, I think people would be dying to vote for him to be the formerly AFC MVP and now MVP in the AFC and now moving over to the other conference and winning it again. So Brady would
be another notch for his belt, right?
That's right.
For the utility belt that is that Tom Brady's got with all the other things.
That'd be the first place I'd look, though. Yeah.
As far as I'm trying to think how many guys have done that, have won the MVP in 2 conferences. That can't be a long number. I got to imagine that's short because most guys typically are great for a small period of time with that one team. It's very rare you go to another team and win that award. I'd have to go back and check that one, but I mean, 45 years old, is he going to throw for 45 touchdowns and win an MVP, Mike? Because that's kind of what we're looking at.
Peyton did it with 2 different teams, but they're obviously the Broncos and the Colts, both in the NFC. So I think that's an interesting narrative that people would think it's cool. Now, great play is going to come with it and a lot of wins. I think if they're the 1 seed in the conference, Joe, where else are you going to look, right? It's not Leonard Fournette ripping off 1,500 yards. It's not Godwin or Evans or anybody like that. They're not going to steal it from him. So I think he's the first place I go. Yeah, you're a Josh Allen super fan, and I'm with you because if they pulled off a 1 seed in the AFC, I think that's interesting, right? Because he can put up a season. There's a lot of when it comes to these awards, and it's a harder thing to bet on. There's a lot of this guy needs to wait his turn or get in line. Right. It's like the Academy Awards. Well, he was the best performance this year, but let's let him wait and give it to the older actor this time around. This is no different. Let Josh Allen wait his turn. All right, well, if he throws up 42 touchdowns, maybe just give it to him because they came in first place. So I think those are a couple of places to go. A longer shot and a guy that I'll probably never stop betting on, at least sprinkling on, is Kyler Murray, because if the narrative worked out where they won the division and probably the most competitive division in football, Kyler is interesting. I suppose you could say the same for Matt Stafford. If they stepped up and won the division, that would be pretty interesting. But they'd have to have, in my opinion, a really good season for Matt Stafford to be looking at MVP. That a lot more would have to align, whereas Kyler is seen as the savior for the Cardinals.
I'm looking at the list, Mike. I don't see anybody because, like we said, when you win MVPs, typically it's a couple back-to-back or you're within a 5-year window, but it's always with the same team. And if it's not with the same team, it's never with the other conference. I'm into the 70s here, and I don't see one. So that is fascinating, fun narrative. Once again, Tom Brady doing things that we never thought we'd see in the NFL.
How about Baker, Joe? How about Baker Mayfield? You could fit a narrative together for him.
You could fit a narrative, but I think that roster's so deep and the defense is so good that I don't think he's going to put up enough numbers to do it.
I think you're right.
If Nick Chubb has a 2,000-yard, it's something you could have a 2,000-yard rushing season and Derrick Henry last year, and you could still not get one damn vote. That, they just don't care. It is a media award, MVP first and foremost, and the media narrative always ends up laying with the quarterback for some reason. Now, Tannehill would be interesting. If all of a sudden Tannehill had this emergent season and the Titans ran roughshot, that would be a fascinating long shot because what a story that would be. I mean, the guy had 40 combined touchdowns last year. People forget that. That could be another guy. If you want to throw a dart, there's an interesting dart to it, Ryan Tannehill.
So that row, if you go to FanDuel, you see that Baker, Kyler Murray, Tannehill row. It's pretty interesting. We are declaring them long shots. It is harder. There's a lot to go through, but the Baker thing would be interesting. But to Joe's point, the numbers would have to be there. So Baker putting up 29 touchdowns isn't going to get it done because somebody will throw for 40.
Here's a really tight one. This is really fun compared to some other years. NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year. Trevor Lawrence is at the top of the board, plus 400, of course. Mac Jones, who is also now starting week 1, plus 450. Justin Fields, who's looked great, plus 650. Trey Lance, who's looked great in the preseason, plus 700. Zach Wilson has looked much better than I thought he was going to, plus 700. Oh, wait. And then you got Najee Harris at plus 900, who's going to get a ton of work for the Steelers as a 3-down back. You got possibly an all-world new tight end who might just break every rookie tight end record in Kyle Pitts at plus 1100. And then the reigning Heisman Trophy winner at 20-1. Oh, yeah, and there's a guy named Jamar Chase and Trey Sermon and Javonte Williams also at 20-1. Mike, this is an incredible group, and I didn't even mention Jalen Waddle at plus 25.
I know, that's the first. I was going to mention.
I love Jalen Waddle. I'm a huge fan, but it feels like it's going to be one of these quarterbacks. Once again, it always kind of comes back to the quarterbacks, for better or for worse. So where would you want to put the money on this one? Because this might be the toughest of all.
This one is really tough because I'm betting the Jaguars under 6.5. I've already bet the Jaguars under 6.5. So I think they're going to be a losing team, 5 or 6 wins on the year. So you're going to throw that to the rookie. Justin Herbert obviously won it last year. He had a fantastic season, and the Chargers weren't very good, but they weren't a last place team or near a last place team. That's very different. But I could see Trevor Lawrence putting up good numbers. I don't know how his coach is going to...
Can you see Trey Lance winning that division with the 49ers? That becomes the question.
So the really interesting ones are the two teams that have a chance to be playoff teams or win the division.
Right.
And I think the Niners right now are my call to win the division, but I'm not convinced that Trey Lance plays 10 games, at least not yet. I think he could. Obviously, he's got a ton of talent, but I think they're sort of comfortable with the Jimmy G, keep Trey on the side. Now he's got a broken finger, so you're dealing with a little bit early in the season that maybe he doesn't get right out there. But Mac, there's a clear runway right now. Mm-hmm. I think the Pats are going to I think the Pats are a playoff team. They'll at least be fighting for it, but I think all the free agency signings for them are not necessarily indicative of like, wow, look at this foundation we've built for the next 5 years. But I think they do very much help in the short term. The tight ends, the Judon signings, I think they really help for this year and next. And I think it helps Mac Jones immediately. So I think a couple of interesting ones are, say Dalton's just terrible a couple of weeks in, and Fields comes in and he's really
the savior. Good. And even if they get a wild card or just miss the playoffs,
that's right.
And you're getting such great odds right now on all of them.
Right.
You're almost better off just kind of taking the 3 that you like the most, put some money there, and then revisit it 6 weeks into the season.
Yeah.
And if things are going the right direction for one of them, double down on it again. That would be my advice for that particular award.
I agree. And my longer shots here that I like are, you mentioned Jalen Waddle. And again, it's not unlike CeeDee Lamb, where you'd probably need somebody to get banged up, where Waddle takes an even more prominent role. Fuller is not available.
Well, don't worry. Devontae Parker and Will Fuller, I'm sure between the two of them can figure that out, Mike.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm not exactly threading the needle on that one. They'll miss time at some point. And the last one is Trey Sermon. I really do think that offense, Shanahan's offense is predicated on being able to rotate backs with a hot hand and run the ball very efficiently. It's a good offensive line and a great offensive scheme. And I think Sermon's going to be given a chance to be the hot hand early. I don't know. I've got shares of Mostert. I've got shares of Sermon. I'm sort of hedging in terms of seasonal fantasy and best ball. But when we're talking about longer shot, you have to come up with a story to tell yourself. And I think Trey Sermon could put up big numbers, even though running backs are not always the easiest one to get an award, but a Rookie of the Year award is not out of the question for Trey Sermon.
All right, I'm only going to touch on this quickly because Defensive Rookie of the Year, Micah Parsons at the top there, plus 600, Jamin Davis at plus 750, Patrick Surtain, the second, he's out there, as well as Owusu Koromoa, Jalen Phillips, Kwity Paye, some good names there, but I just think Parsons is by far the favorite here, more than the odds, because I think he's going to have a national attention on him. He's already looking like the signal caller, too, on the defense. And for rookies, you don't get a lot of that. You saw him do it a little bit in the preseason. So to me, that's like a big one that I circle because you're getting great odds on this one now at plus 600. So I don't even care about the other guys so much, not to take anything away from them. I just feel like Parsons might be one of the better, easier wagers on the board if he stays healthy.
Agreed. I think you're not going to get better odds than this. Jalen Smith's career, I think as many people have seen during the preseason, he's slowed down quite a bit physically, and I think Parsons is going to come in there and just take snaps from everyone. So I think you're right. I don't think you'll get better odds than 6-1. I think you could play something there if you wanted somebody down the board. Greg Rousseau with the Bills, if he put up a 10-sack season, would be interesting, but he's not currently going to be a starter. And if J.C. Horn picked off a bunch of passes, which I think he could do, I think he would be in the mix. And that's 20-1 and 15-1 respectively.
All right, Defensive Player of the Year, Aaron Donald at the top, plus 500. Myles Garrett at plus 600. TJ Watt, plus 750 from your Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike. Nick Bosa at plus 11. Chase Young at plus 11. Joey Bosa at plus 17. You always struggle with the Bosas because of the health. Aaron Donald's a beast, but the problem is Aaron Donald's such a beast, he gets triple teamed, and it's very tough for him to rack up the same kind of numbers. So really, it's looking like who can roam free, and that kind of brings me back to two guys. They've done a lot this offseason in Cleveland in terms of adding more guys around Myles Garrett. That is a very deep defense, a very deep roster, just generally speaking. Garrett at plus 600 is intriguing, and Chase Young at plus 11. I feel like we are just barely scratching the surface of how good that kid can be, and that's a very good defensive line already, and they've made some other improvements as well on that defense year over year. So what are your thoughts on this award?
I think you hit on two guys right off the bat are good. TJ Watt, I don't know that he can have a better season than he had last year. I actually thought he was deserving of the award a year ago. It's hard to fight against how dominant Aaron Donald is, but TJ Watt put up monster numbers. If he ran it back, I think people would look at him. But you're right on Garrett. I think you summarized it well. That you got a great team around him. It's a really strong roster top to bottom. I think people are still acknowledging it, but what Kevin Stefanski did and continues to do, along with Andrew Berry, have really improved this roster a lot. I'm with you. The first guy I thought of was Chase Young, because now no team in that NFC East has repeated since 2005. Can Washington be the team to do it? I think you always want to look for this award, Joe, with a team that's on a slightly upward trajectory. It doesn't have to be an overhaul. And if Washington comes back and say has a winning season and wins the division again, who's going to be at the center of attention? It's not going to be Fitz throwing for 5,000 yards. It's going to be Antonio Gibson having a good year and Terry McLaurin having a good year. But whoa, look at Chase Young. He had 15 sacks. It'll be something like that. I do give a slight shout out to Joey Bosa as well, because I am personally bullish on the Chargers. I think they go over their number this year. Wow. I'll give a little bonus pick here. You can go on FanDuel and find a way to bet teams specifically to be an AFC wildcard team. I don't think the Chargers have a chance in hell to win the division, but I do think that they will be a playoff team. So you can get the Chargers at really good wildcard odds now, as opposed to just betting them to make the playoffs or betting them to win the division, which I don't think will happen. So Bosa can tag on to that narrative, Joe, and potentially be the Defensive Player of the Year.
Some big names in this next one, Mike. NFL Comeback Player of the Year. We don't usually get names quite this big. Yeah. I mean, these are about as big as it gets. Dak Prescott, plus 200. Joe Burrow, plus 700. Christian McCaffrey, plus 700. Saquon Barkley, plus 850. I can't make a case for anybody past that. So
if it's Laurent Duvernay Tardif, man, any bad word I've ever said about the NFL voters, I'll throw it away, because if they vote for a guard as Comeback Player of the Year, then happening. God bless them.
You know what? It'd be great. It's never happening. The fact that it's 10-1 is kind of absurd to me. Like, how is that not 25? Yeah. But anyway, I mean, look, Dak Prescott certainly is the favorite for a reason, but if Saquon Barkley does have a transcendent rebound season, can he push here at plus 850? And I guess the same could be said of McCaffrey, too. I mean, these are two guys that are arguably the 1 and 2 running backs in the league in terms of talent, and you're getting 7-1 and plus 850 on these guys.
The problem with Burrow and Barkley is that those teams are going to stink.
It is an individual award. It is Comeback Player of the Year. So
I get it. So, but you're right. It's stiff competition, big names. The problem with Dak is I just wonder if you wait on Dak a little bit and maybe he doesn't have the best September and you get slightly better odds. He is the betting favorite at only 2-1. I think my lean here is McCaffrey. I think the Panthers are going to be solid. I think he can bounce back in a big way, and it's not me doubting Saquon. I just think the Giants are still going to have problems blocking for him. I think he can wear down during the season again because they're not getting it done for him. The Panthers' offensive line isn't the best one out there, but at least they fortified it in some way. So I'm going to lean McCaffrey there, but really stiff competition. Even when you go down the list a little bit, Sam Darnold, his quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo, another quarterback of a potentially first-place team. Those are pretty interesting. I wouldn't bet on them, but they're interesting choices. And even got Von Miller down there at 23-1.
Sam Darnold should get an award just for surviving Adam Gase. Can we just give him an award for that, please? Yeah. I guess the reward is playing in.
It'd be the Ryan Tannehill Award for surviving Adam Gase.
There it is. Oh, I survived Adam Gase. It's gonna be a whole memoir. The two of them right together. NFL Coach of the Year. Brandon Staley at the top, plus 1,300. Brian Flores, also a very good potential one there, plus 14. Arthur Smith at plus 14. Kyle Shanahan, plus 1,600. That is a very good one. You got Sean McDermott, plus 17. Sean McVay at plus 18. Those two teams I expect to be in the playoffs this year. I think we would agree there. You got Ron Rivera, plus 2,100. Frank Reich, that's not looking as good right now, plus 18. Maybe a weird start to the season for them. And then there's good old Billy Boy at plus 2,200 with the rookie quarterback. Wouldn't that be something, right? Brady goes and wins MVP and Bill Belichick wins Coach of the Year with the rookie quarterback. It's not out of the realm of possibility, but I don't know. For me, I keep looking at Kevin Stefanski at plus 2,400. If they win that division, I don't know how you don't give it to him, because that would be an incredible feat. Going ahead of the Ravens, going ahead of the Steelers, and I know that's pushing the limit with you talking about the Cleveland Browns, but
that's okay.
I don't know, man. That Cleveland Browns
a lot
team,
of credit.
They're deep. That is a deep team.
So for that reason, though, I actually don't think he'll run it back. I just don't really see him getting it again. I think Staley. I hate betting on the favorite as a piece of advice.
Wow, plus 13. That's a pretty good number on the favorite.
But I'm also, that goes in line with my Chargers theory, right? I think they have a chance to be the team that transforms from a struggling team that lost. They lost 7 games in a row, Joe. 7 of their losses in a row are by 1 score or less. I think the coaching change away from the conservative Anthony Lynn is going to help them quite a bit. I think it puts Staley in a position where the team, not unlike the Browns, skyrockets up in terms of the number of wins they have year over year. Some of the other guys, Shanahan is interesting, but I believe he's won it before.
How about Mike Vrabel as a bigger long shot? We haven't even talked about too. I keep coming back to the Titans because I look at the Titans and I understand defensively they've got some warts still, but they did add Bud Dupree. And I trust Mike Vrabel as a coach. I think Mike Vrabel is a very good football man. I think he knows what he's doing. I think last year,
I like him. He coaches aggressively, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate it too. And I think last year maybe was a little Cinderella, kind of staying too late at the ball, because the year before nobody saw him coming, and this year everyone did. But now I feel like they have confidence in themselves as a ball club, and I think that is something to really take into account when you're looking at this award. But as Mike was saying, you're getting great numbers on all these guys, so you could even throw a little at a couple guys and maybe make a nice return potentially.
Like if the Bills really do dominate the AFC East and rip off 13 wins, and maybe they get the bye instead of the Chiefs, then
McDermott's a heck of a coach.
Then Sean McDermott would get it. If they're the 1 seed in the AFC, coming off of a season that was good last year, but then would have a great regular season, they would get it. I couldn't see anybody beating him, actually. Belichick, I just don't think anybody's going to give it to him. Even when he deserves it, he doesn't get it.
That's the funny part. Like he's put himself in that discussion, I think, because of the rookie quarterback again. If Bill Belichick wins the AFC East with a rookie quarterback, and let's say in a crazy universe, right? In a crazy universe, maybe he doesn't get the bye. But what if they go 12-4 and that wins that, or now I guess 12-5 or something like that, and wins the division? Right? Would that be a wild thing? I mean, how do you not at least give it pause and take a look at it and say, wow, look what he's able to do here year over year, take this team that was under 500 and then turn them into a division winner with a rookie QB? That would be interesting.
How you feeling about Mac now? You're the Patriots fan. How you feeling about
I've been
Mac?
the guy for 6 months who's been saying that he was going to be the QB week 1, and people thought I was nuts. They don't think I'm crazy anymore, at least not for that. Not for that. But that was actually my number 1 bold prediction on the Bold Predictions pod we did on Fantasy Pros 2 weeks ago. Mac Jones, week 1 starter. I mean, to me, he just looked better. I mean, it's clear he was more proficient, confident in the offense. it was a no-brainer.
There's no sense in delaying the inevitable when it's that, especially when it's close enough, or he surpassed.
I don't even know if it was close.
I
didn't even think it was close, to be honest. Yeah. You're looking at a guy who can make throws that Cam Newton can't make, number one. And number two, just looked way more efficient with the football. He knew where to go with the football at all times. He was in the progressions. He was into the reads. Cam Newton, by the time he drops back, it's like an extra second or two for him to deliver the football, and then he doesn't deliver it properly. It was just so noticeable. And Mac Jones just looked fresh doing it. Why wouldn't he start? You spent first-round draft capital on him. I mean, come on, let's go. What do you have to lose? The future's now. Speaking of the future, let's look into the future one last time. Let's look at the Super Bowl here. Here you go. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? Let's have some fun here. It is September 1st as us recording this, and there's going to be a lot of football to play. The Kansas City Chiefs are at the top of the board, plus 500. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, plus 650. I think they should be the number one. I really do. I think they're the best all-around team still with the easiest path back there. You mentioned about the bye week. I think they might be a lock for that. The Buffalo Bills are after them at plus 1,200. Then the Packers at plus 12. The Ravens at 14. The 49ers at 14. Then at 15, you've got the Los Angeles Rams, the Cleveland Browns at plus 16. And then you go into the 20s and the big long shots after that. So who do you want to go with? Do you have a favorite? Do you have a long shot? Do you have a fun one? Where do you want to go with your chips for Super Bowl winner outright?
I wish I had a long shot, but you start getting down that board, it doesn't look all that great. I think the longest I'm going to be looking at is somebody like the Browns. The Titans are a good team, but are they good enough to really get through the playoff slog against teams like the Browns and the Bills? I don't really see it, and that's at 25-1. I've been talking about the Chargers. I should probably put my money where my mouth is and at least throw a couple of bucks at 33-1. But even I'm not crazy enough to think that they're going to win the whole thing. There's deeper teams than them. If you ask me to predict it right now, I think it's really one of these favorites. And if I'll put my money where my mouth is and I'll say Bucks versus Bills. And I think the Bucks have a really good chance to run it back. There's a few older guys on the roster, notably the QB, but it's the first team to return all 22 starters since 1979, the Pittsburgh Steelers. That the Steelers did not come back and repeat that year, but it was a funky year in 1980. Tampa Bay Bucks, Buffalo Bills. I think those are your two shots. One's at 6.5-1, the other at 12-1. That's probably where my money would sit right now. And again, the Browns, we're giving them a shot at 16-1.
The Rams and Packers, I think, are real contenders in the NFC. I really do, especially with Stafford.
I like the Rams too. I think people haven't been talking about them enough.
Yeah, I think Stafford's got a whole new lease on life now. But I love where your head's at. I think the Bucks and Bills is a really good one because you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting a good favorite at a good number, and then you're getting a double that number for Buffalo. And Buffalo could get hot. And if they could just find any balance at all in that run game, just enough, because you got to run the football a little bit in January in Buffalo, Mike. Like, you just got to do it. It's a necessity. It doesn't have to be great. It's just got to be something. And it was nothing last year. And it almost cost them that game against Phillip Rivers and the Colts last year because they could not sit on the clock. They just couldn't do it. They kept giving the ball back to them, and they kept giving them shots, and then it got real dicey real fast towards the end. So,
to your point about the Rams, I think the only and I am with you. I'm bullish on the Rams. I think they absolutely have a shot to win that division, and I think people are slightly underselling the change from Goff to Stafford. I think it's going to open up the playbook for McVay in a way that he's been waiting to do for the last couple of years. Keep in mind, if John Walford wasn't hurt at the end of the year, he's probably playing in that playoff game over Jared Goff, just as a strategic, he's our best quarterback on the roster decision. The problem for the Rams, the only Achilles heel that I see for them is that it's a very top-heavy roster. So you're betting on the team. You're probably always doing this when you're betting on a team to win the Super Bowl, but you're betting for all those high-profile players to be healthy. Stafford, Woods, Kupp, Donald, Ramsey, all those guys have to stay healthy because their depth isn't great.
No, and their depth at running back isn't great either. I know they added Michelle, but they did lose Cam Akers already, and we'll see what Henderson is up to. That's the problem. You're right. The Rams, it's a war of health. The Packers, just can Aaron Rodgers overcome the big spot because he seems to fall short every time. Like, I mean, outside of one time, I hate to break it to you folks, but he does. And Tom Brady doesn't. That's why Tom Brady's got 7 rings.
The 2014 NFC Championship game is the one that he's got to be thinking of forever.
100%.
The onside kick, everything else. That game was
I think he's got to be thinking about last year. Like, how do you even come off the field in that scenario for a field goal? How do you allow the coach? You're Aaron Rodgers. You're going to the Hall of Fame. This is a coach a couple years into the league. How in the world do you not say, no, we are not giving the ball back to Tom Brady. We are going to take another shot at this end zone because we're here and we might not see it again. And sure enough, it cost them the game.
He had Tom Brady throw 3 consecutive interceptions and they capitalized on none of it. It's tough to live with.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's tough to live with it. We'll see what we can live with in 2021, but I can't live without Mike Blewitt. Make sure you follow him on the Twitter machine at Mike Blewitt and check him out on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid every Sunday right after me, Joey P. Right. I'm just the warm-up act for Blewitt. Everybody knows that. I'm the warm-up act for you and Ariel, who joined us a couple weeks ago. And it's a great show. It's you and Ariel and Dave Martinez for 3 hours, setting the slate in terms of wagering for the day in the NFL. And you can check out sportsgrid.com for all the places you can watch it. You can also listen to it on the radio on Sirius XM 204. Mike, it's always a pleasure talking with you, my friend. Have a great football season. This is what we live for, and it's finally here, my friend.
Can't wait.
There you go. All right, so that'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Mike Blewitt, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.